Welcome back to the Larson Show. 20 minutes after the hour, I want to mention to you that the latest development in the Edward Snowden escapade, now he is in China. He's in Hong Kong, and he told the South China Morning Post today that he's neither a traitor nor a hero. I'm an American, except that he's not willing to come back and face the music for the crimes that he's apparently committed. He has also now said that the United States is in the business of hacking the Chinese, which doesn't surprise me. But I don't think it's Edward Snowden's job to be releasing that kind of information if it's true. And it does sound like he's causing some problems. Bob Weiner joins us now, who's president of Robert Weiner Associates and a former Clinton White House spokesman and a national Democrat strategist. Mr. Weiner, good to have you on the program. Oh, sorry about that. Mr. Weiner, good to have you on the program.
Good to be with you, Lars. I loved how funny you were on Fox a couple days ago, and that's why I emailed you, Lars. I think your sense of humor, in addition to your understanding of the issues, really adds to the mix, even though I disagree with almost everything you say politically.
Well, that's okay. I try to do my best. Usually if they put me up against a liberal like Juan Williams or Leslie Marshall, it's not hard to be funny at all. They give me the setup lines, and all I have to do is deliver the punchlines.
Well, it's like when they went after Clinton and Starr went after him. You could use the Chinese fortune cookie and say it wasn't obstruction, it wasn't a violation of the law. You got to add the words about sex.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about this first. Is Edward Snowden to you a hero or a traitor?
Well, here's what I think. I actually, Lars, I got to come down in the middle. I think he broke the law, but he is absolutely right on the constitutionality, and the law has to be adhered to, and it's not. If anybody would bother reading the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. The founders would go out of their minds if they thought there was this blanket dragnet for no reason and you didn't specifically target, which is what bipartisan legislation today is now proposing, to actually specifically and clearly target what you're going after, not have a blanket search.
But here's the problem with that theory. I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers point out to me that in 1979, the U.S. Supreme Court, which according to, and I'm a constitutionalist, I think far more so than most of my Democrat friends are, I believe in the Fourth Amendment protections, but the Constitution also says the Supreme Court is in charge of deciding what is constitutional and what is not, and how the Constitution is to be read against the real-world circumstances. And back in 79, there was a court case in which it was they questioned whether the police had the right to use what are called pen registers, which recorded the fact that you made a phone call, the number that you were calling. I don't think it recorded the length at that time, but that information is not physically present in your house, and it doesn't belong to you. It's actually information that is held by a third party that you do business with. So to me, it would be like saying that, when I make a phone call on my cell phone, I'm making the call, and the phone is a phone that I've purchased. The service, though, I'm paying Verizon for. I happen to be one of their customers, and I'm not defending them or their actions. But when I make that phone call and Verizon makes a record of it, is a record of a phone call that I made that doesn't belong to me. The record belongs to the Verizon company. Is that covered by my Fourth Amendment protections?
Well, you raise a good question, but, the replacement for Jon Stewart, John Oliver, last night said that Rand Paul is hardly the person to say that he's going to go challenge the Supreme Court on this. But even from Rand Paul on, people say they want to challenge on this issue. The Supreme Court makes mistakes.
Yeah, they do.
Dred Scott on slavery. They had to
Roe v. Wade.
On that.
I'm sure you'd agree with me that Roe v. Wade has been a gigantic mistake, wouldn't you, Mr. Weiner?
Well, I sure think that Representative Trent Franks today from Arizona, the Republican, that says rape doesn't cause many pregnancies.
Oh, boy.
And what the Republicans have been saying on rape is sort of one reason why they lost single women by 23 points in the last election.
Well, but let's get back to the point. Do my Fourth Amendment protections guard something that I don't own and that I don't possess, a record of a phone call that I made? And if the government, as much as I resent the government doing it, Mr. Weiner, don't get me wrong, I don't like it either, but I also have to stick with the facts. If I make a phone call and the company that I pay to provide my phone service keeps a record of that call, does that record belong to me? And is it protected by my Fourth Amendment protections in the Constitution? If somebody presented it to me that way, and that's the way the 1979 Supreme Court decision was made, I'd have to say, no, that doesn't belong to you. It's somebody else's record.
It's a real violation to get the lists of all your friends. That's what it amounts to.
Well,
guys who are single, do they really want all their girlfriends that they've talked to when they get married? Do they really want their wife to know who their girlfriends
it's not about.
were?
But it's not about what I want.
Those lists are private, proprietary. Now, let me tell you, when Ken Starr went after my wife and me and subpoenaed us, he tried to get our phone records. The phone company sent me a letter, and they said that this isn't a case of drugs. It isn't a case of murder. It's a case of Starr doing a fishing expedition on Bill Clinton, and we're letting you know that. So I went to the press, and I said Starr must apologize because he was secretly trying to get after my wife and me. Those are outrageous invasions of privacy, Lars, and that's what's happening here in a massive scale.
Except for two problems. Number one, there is no explicitly stated right of privacy in the Constitution. Maybe they should have written one in, but they didn't. So we've intuited one that came about, I think, in about the 1960s. I think it originally came from some of the cases involving homosexuals and homosexual activity.
How do you say there's no right of privacy when I just read you the words of the Fourth Amendment which say there is?
Well, read it again, and you don't find privacy. What you find is that if I had a right of privacy...
No warrant, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing...
Read the first part of it.
The place to be searched and the person or things to be seized.
Robert,
That's a right of privacy.
Robert, read the first part of it. That the government
can't come in and to be secure in their person's houses, papers, and
persons, houses, papers, and effect. So if I have my
phone calls aren't part of that.
My check register is in my house. I write it in my hand. It belongs to me. But if I buy phone service from a company and when I make a call, they keep a record. Does that record at the phone company belong to you, or does it belong to the phone company?
They got it from me under my terms.
Well, but there are lots of things. If I send a letter to you, Mr. Weiner, and the letter is in your house, do my Fourth Amendment rights keep the police from going into your house and getting that record?
Well,
no.
Lars, it's one or the other, but the phone company directly got the list from the calls you made. I can't imagine. And by the way, the courts do support these kinds of privacies. They've blown off a lot of the torturing. They blew off a lot of the Justice Department's attempts to do far more in the terrorist penal system than the administration wanted to do. They've thrown some of this stuff out.
Torture is
may throw this stuff out when they find out about it and say it's over-invasive.
But torture is something different. This is where the court did rule, and not just any court, but the U.S. Supreme Court. And like I said, I don't like it either. I would love to have the Congress pass a law that says that, but the law isn't going to be as good as a constitutional protection.
Right.
And at this point, the Supreme Court's ruling on that constitutional right to have the right to privacy in a record that you don't possess and you don't own is a little hard to buy.
Well, this to me, Lars, it just seems like when you talk about you're not being paranoid, it's actually happening. And 1984 and Brave New World, these are the very kinds of things when they do a sweep of all your phone records, all your internet searches, all your websites, all your emails, and they say because you've talked to some people, they have the right to look up the content once they figure out the patterns of who you looked at. That's over-invasive. And the
I don't like it either, Mr. Weiner.
They spend on this could be far better spent in better protection of our national security.
Robert Weiner is president of Robert Weiner and Associates, a former Clinton White House spokesman. I knew he wouldn't bite on the Roe v. Wade issue. Back in just a moment with Tom Tancredo.